Welcome, greetings, namaste. It's really my pleasure and honor to welcome you to this dive into the energies of the sacred feminine, the Shakti of the goddess. My name is Sally Kempton, and what we are going to be talking about today and hopefully experiencing is a kind of initiation into a way of seeing the world that's both very old and also, for many of us, quite new. Goddess practice is a spiritual technology that, in my experience, is perhaps the best technology there is for piercing through the density of the physical world in our own bodies and to begin to dance with the pulsing energy, the subtle energy inside the world and inside our own bodies and minds. And the nature of this energy, this is according to the tantric sages and according to the experience of countless practitioners, the nature of this energy is fundamentally love, a kind of love that can be profoundly wise, deeply motherly, which is also fierce, wild, erotic, protective, creative. And as we get to know this energy, as we get to know Goddess, as we get to know Shakti, we reconstruct a part of ourselves that we may have let go of long ago or that we may not even know, but which literally waits to be discovered in all her beauty and fierceness as a guardian, as a lover, and especially as the source and the intrinsic empowerment to connect us to the love and wisdom at the heart of the universe. And I want to say that what we could call the gift, the fruit, the payoff of goddess practice is that we become lovers and servants of reality, and also especially that we come to recognize and to be empowered by our own inner source of strength. In other words, rather than looking outside ourselves always for wisdom and knowledge and love, we begin to recognize that these capacities are bubbling up from the sacred feminine source, the Shakti within us. So we're concerned here with what I often call a sacred feminine empowerment, which is not only for women and is not in any way an attempt to privilege the feminine over the masculine. But as many of you know, because I know that the study of Tantra is part of the philosophical practice and study that is being unfolded in embodied philosophy. But according to the Tantra, according to the tradition, the archetypal masculine and the archetypal feminine are seen not as gendered physical entities, but as really the two polarities of the absolute consciousness, the pure creativity, wisdom, and love that's at the heart of everything. So, and according to Tantra, the divine masculine qualities are expressed in the inner world as stillness, as pure awareness, as a kind of transcendent freedom, as that which is eternally transcendent and which is also experienced as the ground of being. In deep meditation, we find the divine masculine as the witness consciousness, as it's popularly called, but particularly as that which underlies our entire experience of life. And in the tantric tradition that I follow and practice, this divine masculine energy is called Shiva. Shiva, which has many meanings, but which I like to translate as that which underlies, as the ground that underlies everything. And again, according to Tantra, the divine masculine qualities are expressed in the inner world, in the external world, we could say, as structure, as order, as ethical controls and rules of engagement, as whatever it is that underlies the social order. And of course, these are as crucial to the dance of life as the feminine principles of creative playfulness, sensuality, flow, and embodied love. And these esoterically are known as the qualities of Shakti, the creative side of the absolute. And again, as many of you know, Shiva, Shakti, divine masculine, divine feminine, are engaged in a constant dance, a constant interplay. The Shakti or divine feminine aspect of consciousness literally emerging as a kind of ecstatic urgency to become, that is constantly bubbling up from inside the stillness, and which is also constantly giving rise to universes, both external universes and also, of course, the inner universes of thoughts and feelings. So, in a certain sense, from the tantric point of view, everything that we know, everything that we experience, both in our own bodies and minds and in the universe that we meet through our senses, all of it is an aspect of Shakti. All of it is an aspect of this divine feminine force. Some people talk about the essence of life as being composed of being and becoming. And if that's the case, we could say the being aspect is the masculine, the becoming aspect is the feminine. And in one of the texts of Tantra that has been, I would say, my own Bible over the years, it's called the Pratyabhijna Hridayam, the heart of the doctrine of recognition. The first two verses say that Chitti Shakti, which is actually the feminine form of consciousness, Chitti in her own, this pure consciousness, this pure awareness filled with creativity, in her own freedom, her swatantriya, manifests this universe upon her own screen, out of her own being, and essentially lives within it as us. So the fundamental understanding behind all goddess practice is that there is one great, pulsing, ecstatic, urgent awareness whose nature is love and creativity, who is constantly manifesting experience, both as physical density and as inner experience. And one of the powerful ideas at the heart of divine feminine practice is really the recognition that true power, true creative power, both for men and women, arises from this intrinsically feminine inner source, the inner depths of consciousness, in which creativity is understood as a property of the genderless divine feminine. So to experience true power, the kind of limitless energy and creativity that does not depend on anything outside itself and that doesn't depend on artificial controls, we actually have to come to know the deep feminine. Just as to recognize the stillness and the let's call it the clarity and the ground out of which all this comes, we must come to know the deep masculine. Obviously, we need both polarities in order to be whole. And obviously, these polarities are in no way gendered. They are equally present in beings of the masculine as of the feminine gender. But the great critique, again, as most of us know, of so-called patriarchal society is that both on the social level and on the depth level, it's attempted either to control or to deny the power of the feminine or to harness it in the service of its own structures. So this, in a certain sense, in my experience, the emergence of true feminine spirituality in our time has been, in certain ways, the effect of the emergence of political and economic power for women. But in fact, it's so much deeper than that, and it is so much about the soul. So what sacred feminine practice shows us how to do is really to allow ourselves to open to the wellspring of Shakti, of divine feminine power, that whose purpose is really to awaken us to the real meaning of our embodiment. So in sacred feminine practice, in tantric practice, there's an understanding that spirit, that, the intrinsic spirit at the heart of everything, exists as that which is behind the entire universe, both physical and subtle. Spirit also exists as our deepest self, the Atman, the soul, the Buddha nature. And this is a fairly radical idea for Westerners. Spirit also exists in specific light forms, which are known as deities. And these deity forms can be experienced in many different ways. They can be experienced as archetypal energies that act through the cosmos, through the universe, that express themselves as weather patterns, that express themselves as cultural patterns. They also express themselves, of course, through the human personality and the human energy system. And these kind of archetypal goddess energies have very distinct qualities and signatures that we can begin to know. They have names like Durga, the invincible one, who represents the energy of pure divine will and strength and protective power. Lakshmi, whose name is actually translated as the sign of good fortune, who is the energy that manifests as harmony, as abundance, as natural fertility. Lalita, who I'm going to talk about a bit today, whose name means the playful one, and who is that aspect of Shakti whose divine play is the cosmos, and whose gift I experience as the erotic reverence for the cosmos and the world, for the body and the world. Saraswati, creative flow, who's the deity of intelligence, of wisdom. She's the goddess of words and music. Many more goddess forms. And all of these divine forms express themselves within us in different aspects as the faces of our own gifts and powers, as the enlightened divine qualities in each of us. And they're also real figures who exist as light forms in the subtle realms, who appear in dreams, who show up in meditation, who many of us have experienced as kind of subtle presences. And part of the gift of tuning into goddess energies for each of us is their capacity for giving us grace, for giving us help, for opening us to the deep structures of the universe. So before we get into the specifics and into what I hope will be a transmission of a kind of intimacy with Goddess, before we get into this, I want to add one more piece of tantric philosophy that's very critical to understanding why we study Goddess, why we invoke Goddess. In the tradition, one of the core teachings about the universe and the human being, the human soul, is the teaching of Maya, the teaching that in the process of manifesting as universes, the creative Shakti, the goddess, veils herself so that the world begins to look like a collection of separate different objects, which are very much different from spirit, and very much in which all of these beings and souls and objects experience ourselves as different from each other. And this experience of feeling separate and different is known in the tradition as bondage. It's the source of our fundamental suffering. And we don't really discover ourselves or find the place where we can live in the world ecstatically, which is really what the goddess path is all about. We don't really discover this until the key to unlocking our vision is given to us. And this capacity to, this shift in vision that allows us to see the divine in the world, not as an intellectual supposition, but as an actual felt experience. This shift in vision, this shift in perception is the gift of the goddess. In other words, what the tradition tells us is that because she, the primordial Shakti, has veiled reality for us, has created this situation in our neural wiring where we experience ourselves as limited and separate. She herself has to open the gate. And traditionally, goddess practice for beings like ourselves who are interested in enlightenment, who are interested in spiritual growth, goddess practice has had the ultimate goal of really inviting or invoking or coaxing or offering ourselves to goddess such that she can begin to awaken our capacity for seeing through the veils and recognizing the true structures of the universe. So goddess practice, in other words, and the empowerment that goddess gives us is really considered not only crucial to the experience of awakening, but also, let's call it the fast track to awakening. Because when we have a relationship with our own intrinsic power, we begin to experience what's behind our eyes, what's behind sound. We begin to experience that all of the energies inside our body and inside the world can connect us to this one divine energy that's the source.